Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way.
All right, how do I look? Ready?
A little sweaty.
Post-it?
I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the Next Reel. When the movie ends,
Our conversation begins.
dinner for schmucks is over. So collect your mice.
I host a dinner once a month.
We can do Saturday.
It's not really a girlfriend type thing. You invite idiots to dinner and make fun of them?
Okay, that is messed up.
I know.
So you told them you're not going?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
Why can't you just suck it up, make fun of some idiots?
Sometimes you have to do the right thing.
I saw this little guy in the street and I was trying to save him from masterpieces.
Amazing.
In the words of John Lennon, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not.
The only one.
The only what?
That's the lyric. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one.
I don't think so, Tim.
Andy, Dinner for Schmucks. We've watched Dinner for Schmucks now. This is the end of our Francis Weber series. This is the final pairing off of Le Dîner de Cons last week, the Idiot Dinner, and now we have Jay Roach's 2010 take on this comedic story. What'd you think? Did you laugh real hard?
You know, this is where I struggle with some of these movies. And this is actually the most recent Francis Weber film that has been a translation or that he's been involved in any way.
Yes.
This is the last one. I'm not sure if there are more remakes of other films of his that are in the works. I don't know. I'd hate to see this as the last one going out because I really struggle with this film. It has its moments. It does have its moments. But, last week we were talking about when I watched The Birdcage for the first time, I was really surprised at how much a faithful remake it was of La Cage aux Folles. It was a very kind of faithful retelling of the story. Yes, they expanded some characters, made the story a little bigger, but it was the same story. It had the same beats throughout. This film is an example of kind of what I maybe was expecting with that one, where Hollywood comes in, takes an original idea, twists it up and does something else with it, and then delivers that as the quote remake. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I really struggled with this because I feel like the original was just a straight up farce. It had characters that were broad, not necessarily a likable, character in the main character of the story, but they worked really well because they were so farcical, both of them. In this film, the Americans came in and said, you know what? It's a little too farcical. We can't have a lead that's that unlikable. We need to make our lead likable. Let's get Paul Rudd in it and let's rewrite it so he's not a regular of this dinner for Schmucks. This is his first time, and he's invited because of this opportunity for a promotion at work. And he's at odds with the decision. And just by doing that, and there are other elements too, but just by that addition to the story, I felt like, well, okay, but now you have done what so many people complain about when you have Hollywoodized the story, and you have made it into something that it didn't need to be, because it was a straight up farce and it worked that way. Now it's just this kind of this schmaltzy Hollywood story about this guy who is having these struggles with this whole decision of his. And I feel like there are other issues that I have, but I feel like just that change, as much as I love Paul Rudd and Steve Carell, as much as I love the two of them together, and as much as I buy into their connection by the end of the film, I was like, why? Why did we have to go this route with this film?
I look at Paul Rudd, and I almost think that in attempting to make him more likable, they've made him less likable for me. They've made him, first of all, anemic in the second half of the film, but in the first half of the film, they've made him aspirational to a fault, right? They've made him a guy who is lying to his girlfriend, who is scheming because he's demonstrating that he's willing to bend over backwards in a deeply uncomfortable way to join this dinner, all for that brass ring of Western accomplishment, right? He works in big finance. He aspires to be the 1%, right? Which doesn't age well. And in a movie like this, like, here we are 10 years later, this guy's the villain, like in our movies today, right? I mean, this guy, he's the bad guy. And here he's meant to be this likable guy on a roller coaster of new friendship. And I find that like it just is not held up for me. The gags aren't funny enough and they don't hold up for me. But I think the bigger problem that I have is with our schmuck, what they have done to Steve Carell. I don't know if it's how he, if it's his interpretation of the original material. I was skimming through the screenplay earlier today, and I didn't read it the way he portrayed it, but they made him come off like much more of a sort of manipulative. He has this deeply hard edge around him. I don't know what it is, but I found him. There's none of that affability that I had with our idiot in the last movie. This Steve Carell's performance, I found, was just way too abrasive to even begin to get the joke that we're supposed to get between these two guys. And that was sort of lost on me.
Roger Ebert liked this film. He gave it 3 out of 4. Let me just read this, a few bits of his review, because I found it interesting the way that he read exactly what it is you're talking about. Dinner for Schmucks was inspired by Francis Weber's French film The Dinner Game, which was an enormous hit in France, but seemed to shade on the mean side. The genius of this version, he's calling this genius, depends on the performance by Steve Carell, who plays Barry Speck as a man impervious to insult and utterly at peace with himself. He's truly a transcendent idiot. He goes on to say, one of the reasons we love the great eccentrics in Dickens, I believe, is that they're so pleased with themselves. You cannot be a great eccentric if you're not a happy one. Otherwise, there's no fun in it. And I can't help but feel like, I don't know, maybe it's just not for us, because I'm with you. I don't see what Ebert sees with Carell. He's an idiot. Is he a transcendent idiot? No, I just think that he's a comedic, farcical idiot past the point of comedy. Like, he's taken it to such an extreme that I just struggle with laughing at anything. I'm just he's so there's just so much that he turns it into a character that I completely don't even buy. I just don't even see a semblance of reality in this character. And that, I know farce is big and broad, but I feel like there's a point where it shouldn't pass, but because then it just becomes unbelievable still. And I feel like this film passed it.
The problem with it here is that there's no runway for these characters to actually grow on us in a way that is sort of sublime, right? So I would suggest that there is an attempt at exactly what Ebert saw at the dinner, right? The resolution of the dinner. And we need to talk about that because we spend a lot more time at the dinner, certainly more time than in the last film, at the idiot's dinner. And there is that sense of, attempting to resolve the wisdom of the fool in that scene. And I feel like if I liked these characters more leading up to that, it would be an earned resolution. And as such, it sort of struck me out of nowhere. Since when did these characters find that ultimate wisdom of being so sure of themselves, of being so protective of the creative ones, the fools, the jesters? I found it utterly sort of inconceivable by the time we actually get to the dinner, and was super frustrated.
And, I was reading through some people's reviews, and a lot of different reviews were like, oh, by the time we get to the dinner, the comedy really hits in high gear. And I'm like, God, really? Because I felt like it just went to this point where I was like, I wasn't laughing at all. I was just looking at the screen and just kind of wow, they are pushing so far with everything, with all of these quote idiots and all of the straight people who have brought them, that I'm just I struggle buying any of them. And it was just, it made the ending, especially when we get to the whole mind control versus brain control battle. And I'm like, is this a thing?
Oh God, Galifianakis was just completely ill-conceived addition to this movie.
Yeah, I really appreciated the through line of the tax collector or the tax auditor in the previous film and the way that played out. And I felt like the extension of it here was it just was a little much for me.
A little much. It was extraordinary. It made my skin crawl. But that's I want to go back to the dinner though, because the initial sort of stab at redemption is when Carell's character Tim Barry gets to stand up and start stacking all his boxes, and he does his little monologue and shows all the little dioramas. Did you get the same thing I got out of that? They're trying to resolve. And did you feel a heartbeat in the film, or was it just too little too late?
No, I mean, I do. And I mean, I don't think that this film is a complete failure. I do think that there is a story that works where you have this guy who brings this, Tim, who decides, I'm going to bring this guy, Barry, to this party, and he's got guilt and everything. But by the time we get to the end, I buy his transition. I buy that conversation he has with Carell about, you're an earwig, you have brain control. Like I buy his conversations, I buy their relationship. I do feel like that worked, and that's, I think, part of the issue that I have with it. I mean, it's fine Hollywood writing. I think that they're able to tell that story well, but it didn't need to be there. And that's, I think, the struggle I have with it, is that they felt that we can't just do a straight up farce. We have to make a character, redeemable, and we have to have this journey for him. And he's a good guy, but he makes a bad decision. And at the end, he has to have this change, this change in his conscience that lets him speak for this idiot. It ended up feeling so constructed. And I feel like that might be my issue with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the idea of making the former, guy that we don't like in the last movie, right, the industrialist publisher, here they made that role the soft-edged bumbling guy, and they gave the hard edge to the idiot. And I just don't think it works. I think as a result, we don't understand or like either of them. And I was super frustrated by that. The brain control, mind control gag at the end, that's supposed to be the big hero moment where Carell's character is supposed to sort of unveil his hidden confidence, his hidden power, and take back some control over his boss.
Yeah, the man who also stole his wife.
Yes,
from him. Yes,
Galifianakis. Obviously, I think I used the words, he made my skin crawl in this movie. I felt like they did such a disservice to this connective tissue right in the middle of the movie, where we're supposed to get a sense of where our idiot works. And they lost it, because I think what made the heart of the dinner game beat so beautifully, so strongly, is that these two guys, the tax collector and the idiot himself who works in that office, they had an affinity for one another. They kind of liked each other. They had that camaraderie around the football games, and they yelled at each other, and it was just really charming and great. And in this movie, it was just Galifianakis doing his thing. It was the Between Two Ferns version of that character, and it just didn't work. I think without giving Barry an anchor into the world, I think we lose a lot. I don't think if you just watch this movie by itself, you would not know that, right? You would not see what's missing. And what's missing is a connection between Barry and the world and his world that reminds him that he's part of a lot of people who are just like him. And he doesn't see the fact that he's the idiot in a way that I think is really heartwarming. This movie sucked that out of it.
I think that the original, they hint at what to expect from the dinner game, because you get the guy who opens the film with his boomerang collection, kind of a peculiar character. And now you have this guy who builds famous structures out of matchsticks. So you can get a sense of where they're going, but you don't go too far down that line. In this film, I was like, okay, I couldn't help but agree to a certain extent with Barry at some point, where he's just like, this is a dinner with all these amazing people with all these great skills. I'm like, well, yeah, there's some, that's the struggle I have with these bullies who pick these people because there's a thing about them that they are calling them idiots. Is that like, what is the definition that these guys are pulling for? Because I mean, I would say I'd probably have a different definition of what an idiot is. And so I ended up struggling as I was watching such a strange group of people, like the blind fencer and the guy with the vulture and the woman who speaks to dead animals. And, it's just like, okay, there's a lot of peculiarities here, but to call them idiots, I was like, I feel like there's a very different definition as to what they're looking for there. And so I ended up, because we show so much of the dinner, I felt like, okay, I feel like they're shooting themselves in the foot by choosing to actually show the dinner, because now they're having to pick these people. And I'm like, I just don't think that that's what this dinner is.
And I, you know, in some respects, that's the same challenge that I had with the last movie too, right? What is an idiot? What was so beautiful about the word, as we discussed last week, is that it really, you know, culturally means both of those guys. So you already know going in that both of them, depending on who you are, is the idiot, is the con. And in this movie, I think there is less of that sort of cultural identity around schmuck. Schmuck has been, I think, used in such a way that it is by default less than. That's what certainly the Bruce Greenwood faction is demonstrating, right? There's nothing you want to do to Ron Livingston but punch him in the face. Like it is because he so clearly demonstrates that anyone is less than him if he's not, if they don't sort of work in that office and strive for that big corner office, that sort of experience.
Yeah, like the guy who Tim is trying to, you know, fill the spot of, right? I mean, you almost feel like these guys would just bring him to dinner.
Yeah.
And so just because he wasn't good enough to be in their club. So it made for a big struggle. And but that was, you know, a whole question I had looking at Francis Weber and these different remakes of his. Is there a better way to go when you're doing remakes? Because I mean, The Birdcage was largely very similar to its original La Cage aux Folles. This is a very different way to shape the dinner game. Is there a better way to make a remake? Does it work to do it this way, or is one, you know, better than the other? I don't know.
I mean, I think The Birdcage was such a terrific example of when to sort of time the cultural market to sell that particular message in another movie. I think it just worked. I think they set it in the right time, in the right place, and it was such an appealing cross-cultural examination of moral majority and identity and secrets. And we had trouble with the kids, but, you know, largely the movie was great. And I think last week's movie, again, largely was, you know, it was handled with a bit of sensitivity, I think, that lets you in and around. And this movie, this was the last thing I feel like we talked about right before we closed the show last week. This movie is so American. I mean, not just Western, but American, and not in a good way, right? It's not representative of our of you know, what we may know as our sort of kinder nature that does exist. It's in there. Like, we know how to have fun, and we know how to laugh, and we know how to do these things. And this just made two unlikable people confused and unlikable in other ways through context. I get the feeling that Roach and team hadn't seen the movie that I saw in the dinner game. That's what it felt like to me. They were remaking a different movie.
I end up feeling when I watch a remake like this that they almost didn't like the original. They said, let's do something a little more just to make it, you know, we'll flesh it out. We'll really kind of make it actually have a real story.
Well, so, okay, but case example, right? This is the Americanism of it, right? If we push a door open gently in the original, we're going to throw the door open and nail it open in this one. And I think the example here is when the other woman shows up and ends up in, you know, doing her, like, shows up in like leather and lace, and she's, you know, they have that chase with Barry around the apartment, just destroying the apartment, and it ends up being a weirdly sort of tasteless. I didn't find it particularly funny at all. Romp, kind of a destructive romp through Tim's life.
Yeah.
That did not get to the sort of humor and the sense and sensibility of the original. It did not carry that at all. It just was blunt force trauma to the original idea.
It was. That didn't work for me at all. It was just like a nonsense way to rework the character that he had slept with, right?
Yeah.
It turned it into kind of over the top nonsense. That being said, I want to bring up the later scene with Darla at some other point, because I actually like that.
Well, let's do it. Are you talking about the restaurant?
That's the one scene in this movie that I'm like, they nailed everything in that scene. The way that it plays out, the way that the uncomfortable awkwardness kicks in when Barry walks in with Darla. And like, because it was going well, you had the Swedish couple kind of talking with Tim about everything. And then all of a sudden that happens. And that was so funny because they want the proposal and Darla is so excited and she's totally into it. Like, I was like, God, this is what this whole movie should have been. It was just spot on perfect. And then his actual girlfriend shows up and it's just like that constant escalation. I'm like, oh, this was genius. This was, I think, the best of Jay Roach, right? This is the sort of comedy that I think he does really well in Meet the Fockers and in Austin Powers. It's just like, it just was that amplification of one thing after the other that kept working and making it a better and better scene. And for me, I was like watching Darla as she's practically in tears as he's proposing to her. I was just like, that was the moment for me of this film. And I kept hoping for more scenes like that to come out of this, and it just never did. So I don't know if you liked it as much as I did, but for me, that scene was just spot on perfect.
Well, I do have some things also that I liked about the movie. That scene is one of them, and I'm right with you. The sort of layering, the comedy layering that he does, but he still works small, right? I mean, it is an intimate scene in the movie, and it's big laughs. Right. It's when it becomes so big, back at the apartment destruction scene with Darla, it's so big. It's such a big sort of comedic set piece. It no longer works for me. It's like come off the rails. This one, intimate at the restaurant, plays on language, plays on misunderstandings, mistaken identities. Those kinds of things are I think, true to the source material in a way that earned the remake for me. I'd like to talk a little bit, though, about Jemaine Clement.
Before we do, there's one last thing that I wanted to say, and I can't remember how I got distracted from it, but you were talking about this film feeling very American. And the one thing that I really felt also said this is an American remake is the fact that in this version, they really, really felt that these two guys, you have to believe that they're going to be best friends by the end of the movie. And, you know, that's the American way, right? Of telling a story like this. Tim learns his lesson, and by the end, you're having Barry's voiceover explaining how everything worked out for everybody. And of course, you know, Barry and Tim are buddy. And I would never believe that at the end of the French film that those two guys ever would have been friends afterward.
Right. And they leave it up in the air. Like there is a possibility somewhere that those two guys would end up being friends, that it transcended the oh, you're an idiot, you make so many mistakes on the phone, to, oh, that's just part of who he is kind of relationship. I can buy that, but they left it open to us to dissect it. And I think you're right. This movie that's a particularly American thing. All right. So Jemaine Clement as Kieran. What do you think of this character?
You know, I like Jemaine Clement. I like him a lot. I think he's just a really funny guy. I think his character of Kieran here is a really funny character. I don't know if I needed us to go down this road with yet another crazy character. Like, I felt like they're taking the farce, the level of it, and they keep pushing it higher and higher to the point where I'm just like, I just don't end up buying any of these characters because the level of the comedy has pushed so far out of the realm of anything that I would say is believable, to a point where I'm just like, I just don't know. The one character that I feel like, you know what, he's an artist, he's crazy, I kind of buy as this crazy character. I don't know if I completely like him, but there is a level of him that I buy. And I think that's kind of funny.
Yeah, no, and the way just watching you stumble around your own opinion of this, it delights me because that's what's going on in my head. It's like my inner Andy just doesn't know what to do with himself. I really like the character. Like, I think it's super funny, and it's one of those ancillary characters, right? Those kind of bench strength characters that I walk away from the movie thinking, I know in my heart of hearts that was enough. That it was enough Jemaine Clement with the horns and everything. But I do also kind of subversively want more of him and less of everyone else.
Well, I think it's because he had a line, and I wrote it down here.
Like these two women, I'm going to make love to these women. That's who I am.
No, but I think for me, it was a moment of clarity. Like, he's a crazy character. He's dressing crazy. He's doing crazy things. But he has one moment where I'm like, whoa, okay. I feel like he is a character who acknowledges his level of insanity. And he says, when he's dressed as a goat and he's getting ready to make love to those two women, he says, I'm just a goat who is halfway through eating itself. and I was like, I think he gets it. Like, I think he actually is the one in this film who gets it.
He's the only one who gets it because he's true to himself. He is, like, you can imagine the first time he puts on the ram's horns and the loincloth and the legs, that everybody would look at him like they look at Steve Carell at Barry with the mice, collecting the dead mice off the street, right? You know that's how it starts. But he is the case example of what happens when you just keep going and you keep putting the goat on and you keep taking pictures. And I like that. I kind of like that message. He's not a likable guy, but I find him very funny. And I like what he represents in the movie. Now, the problem I have with that character in particular is that it is one more in a parade of faces, right? Because we obviously have Carell and Rudd, and then we have Galifianakis introducing, Jemaine Clement, and then we have all of the other guys, Larry Wilmore, who I think is a genuinely funny guy. He probably fits the part here well, but he's just, ends up being another face with Ron Livingston. We have David Walliams, Bruce Greenwood. We can't forget Kristen Schaal, who is another iconic comedic voice right now. There are so many of these big faces that for some reason I find myself, the more I'm awash in the mechanics that they have to put into play to make the script work with all these people and all the different set pieces. And now we're going to dinner and we have to meet all the other people who are there. Like, it just loses so much through distraction. And I'm with you. I don't think we need all of it. We certainly easily don't need half of it.
And I think the thing with Jemaine Clement, again, I kind of end up buying his character. He's purely there to really kind of be another foil for, and we have a similar character. We just never really meet him except for a phone call in the original. But it's really there for the wife, for the girlfriend, Stéphanie Szostak, who plays Tim's girlfriend here.
Yes.
And it's really just an opportunity to give her somebody to potentially be more involved with. And I don't know. Julie, her character, Stéphanie Szostak's character, was also one that I'm like, yeah, okay, they gave a little more to, but I don't know if I ever really cared that much. And I don't know. I felt like like you were saying, they stacked it so high with different actors and stuff that by the time we're with Stéphanie and spending time with her, I'm like, gosh, I kind of like. I just don't know if there's that much with her that I find that interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe we needed a straight person, though. I don't know.
Maybe, but don't we get the sense that person exists even in the original, that even though we don't see her as much in the movie, do we really need to follow her to the affair? Do we need to follow her to the farm, so to speak? Do we need to follow her and meet the character? I think that is that becomes sort of low-hanging fruit in the adaptation. Like, oh, what could we do different? Well, one thing we could do different is actually follow the wife and make her a character of some agency. But I think in doing so, while it might be well-intentioned, I think it is a distraction. And so that's frustrating. I don't think her storyline was that good. When we follow him following her more aggressively, it becomes less funny and more of just a, romp through the streets.
Yeah, there's a little less excitement because we know it's her, and it's like, she's kind of just the straight the straight
And the
lady,
keys, like the
no-name
key
actress
gag.
who is
Yeah.
just there because Hollywood needs to cast somebody in the role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. Again,
Sadly.
well-intentioned. Absolutely. I get it. But I just don't think we needed that. But I think the bigger question is, did Tim and Julie have anything special? Like in this movie, they were not married yet. He tried to ask her. I'm not sure what the significance is of the fact that he keeps asking and asking and she keeps saying no. In the original movie, they were already married.
Well, I felt it was that she wasn't, I think that they kind of made it feel like she would marry him when he figured out where to kind of set his loyalties. Okay. And I think it was a lot of it was his loyalties were still at the office and trying to prove that he was, he has that whole speech at the end when she's standing behind him and he doesn't realize it. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's the direction that they're pushing with the whole thing, is she wanted him to feel like he was being more authentic with her. And all the stuff he was doing at work obviously wasn't getting him there. Very Hollywood. That felt so scripted. Yes.
It's very, very scripted. Yeah, I think that's probably why it feels like such a distraction, is because we're coming off of a film that had, sort of no such allegiance.
Yeah.
Which is too bad, because Stéphanie Szostak, I haven't seen a lot of her work, but she's been in a bunch of stuff. She's just wrapped up Million Little Things. Looks like I think it's done. But she was in Iron Man 3.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. She was in a number of different films for kind of, there's a big burst of them in the kind of 2008 to 2011 or so, whereas even a little past that if you go through 2016.
Right.
She's just busy. And and then she's done some TV. And but I think that she's somebody, I don't want to fault anything on her. I thought she performed it fine. I just think that the way that it's written it ended up feeling very much like the way Hollywood often writes the wife or the spurned girlfriend role. Mm-hmm. It's just like she's there just to help the guys become friends. It just doesn't end up feeling like there's really much there for her.
Anybody else in particular you want to talk about in this movie besides the fact that
I just have to say, I love Bruce Greenwood. I want Bruce Greenwood to be in my family. He's just the greatest. And I really have a problem seeing him be so mean and hateful. I'm just like, that's not the Bruce that I know.
He's certainly not the Bruce that's my uncle.
That's right.
Certainly not that Bruce. That Bruce, he's Pike. He's Pike. He's going to show up at my house, and he's going to bring me some Krispy Kremes, and he's going to be wearing the gold shirt. And he's going to say, he's going to say some.
What's interesting is, this came out in 2010, the same year that he was also in Meek's Cutoff, which we've talked about on the show.
Yeah.
And I will say, the thing that I do love about Bruce Greenwood and always have is that I feel like he has a lot of range. He's a guy who's all over the place as far as what he can do on screen. And clearly 2010 was a year of some broad stretches, because kind of the crazy Stephen Meek, the titular character in that film, and then this guy here. Plus he had another film in 2010, Barney's version, which I haven't even seen, with Star Trek the year before, Super 8 the year after. He's just such a busy guy. I really love what he brings to the screen. So great seeing him here.
He's played the president
in
several movies. Are you looking, or can you name them without looking?
I can't remember if it was both of the Kingsman films. No, it was just the second one, because we never went to America in the first one.
That is true.
That's
You're one down.
And then he was, of course, it's just, what's it called? 10 days or something in October. What's that movie called? The one where he's, isn't he JFK in that movie about the Cuban Missile Crisis? Kevin Costner.
I would like you to get the number of days right if this is going to count.
13 days.
13 days, Andy. Yes.
Oh, man. I knew I was wrong. I was going back to Eisenstein and
10 days
the Russian
October.
Revolution.
Okay, but that is only the second of 3 times that he has played the president.
And see, he just has he should be president.
He should be president,
just looks like somebody who is the
yes.
president. Boy, a third time. Is this something I've seen?
God, I hope so, because this is a part of a duo of films, although he was only in the second one, that should be on this show. If not legitimately, then certainly as guilty pleasures.
I don't know. What is it?
2007, National Treasure Book of Secrets.
Oh, okay. I should have known that. Yeah. I should have known that.
You're fine.
I have seen those and I actually do very much remember because he has to Nicolas Cage has to kidnap him and then they have the whole conversation. Yes, I remember. It was in the trailer too.
And he is so presidential, even in that movie. I would want that president to be our president.
Yes.
Even kidnapped by Nicolas Cage, which is not outside the realm of possibility.
That's right. That's true.
All right.
It could happen.
It could totally happen. Steve Carell, I don't think we have anything else to say about Steve Carell other than isn't it great that he could do this movie as his audition for Welcome to Marwen?
Boy, I tell you, man, seeing him working with those mice, I'm like, wow, I feel like this was totally a prequel.
Yeah.
Very weird prequel. We didn't mention that this is, I think, is this, by the time we got to this one, the third time that he and Paul Rudd had worked together?
Oh.
Because there was Anchorman, and there was the 40-Year-Old Virgin.
40-Year-Old Virgin.
Was Anchorman 2 before or after this? It was after.
Anchorman 2 was 2013.
Yes, that was after.
Yeah.
They're in that group, kind of that club of actors who work a lot together in this type of comedy, right? They do a lot of these films, whether it's working with Judd Apatow or different filmmakers like who are making these sorts of films. I feel like they just end up kind of tapping into that same group, and so end up in a lot of films with each other. And maybe that's it, but I can't help but feel like there are more that they've done together.
They call them the Frat Pack, is what that group is called. And it is a group that is considered to include Ben Stiller, Owen Wilson, Luke Wilson, Will Ferrell, Steve Carell, and can you name him? I think you can. Double V.
I don't know.
Vince Vaughn. Vince Vaughn. And so they
which is weird because I don't see him in the pack.
I know.
Except for maybe like Old School.
Right. Weird. And then he immediately transcended the pack.
Right. He left it.
He left the pack. Before, so this was apparently, I'm looking at Wikipedia now, and so apparently the first reference was from USA Today that dubbed them as the Frat Pack in 2004, but it was Entertainment Weekly who had earlier referred to them as the Slacker Pack, because Entertainment Weekly had already used Frat Pack to describe another group: Leonardo DiCaprio, Tobey Maguire, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, and Edward Norton, who were already the Frat Pack, they'd been already taken up. So Entertainment Weekly dropped Slacker Pack, and they now have used Frat Pack, and it is back to the Wilsons, Ferrell, Carell, Vaughn, and Stiller.
Well, so what's Leonardo DiCaprio's group called now? Did they get their name usurped? They don't get a name anymore?
They have no name. They have no name anymore.
Maybe
it's taken away.
Toby's involvement. They said,
That's right.
Know what?
It's because of Spider-Man 3.
You're well.
He ruined it for everybody.
I was thinking of Molly's Game more specifically.
But what I was really looking for is if we could find, yes, indeed. Okay, so what were we looking at? We were looking at
films that they have done together.
Carell. Oh, see, and they also include guys like David Koechner and Seth Rogen.
It's just, and they're all constantly doing things together. I feel like it's just, it does feel very much like some club. Yes, it does.
40-Year-Old Virgin. He was not in Night at the Museum, Sausage Party.
Who are you looking at?
Well, I'm looking at Paul Rudd and all of his minor roles, and seeing where Carell overlaps. Steve Carell, Anchorman.
Did you know Steve Carell was in Curly Sue?
No, I did not know that.
I didn't either. That's
They were also.
crazy
He was
to me.
also in Wake Up Ron Burgundy, the Lost Movie. They were.
Oh,
in,
that's just like one of those short
Yep.
things. Yeah, maybe it is only the few. Anchorman, 40-Year-Old Virgin. I'm just going through Carell's filmography here.
Boston Animated, the Vegas Spectacular. They were in together.
Dinner for Schmucks, Anchorman
That was
2. Yeah.
That was it. Not a huge crossover on the frat pack.
I do like them on screen together. I
do
think that
too.
they have good chemistry. They work well together, and they do the comedy. They do it nice. They do nice comedy here.
They do it nice. Andy Nelson, the next reel.
Put that on a shirt.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
Did we mention Octavia Spencer's in this?
Oh my God, man! The Idiot's Dinner is it's a who's who of like, why did they agree to do this movies?
Chris O'Dowd, Octavia Spencer.
Chris O'Dowd. Okay,
Patrick
Chris O'Dowd was
Fischler.
funny.
Yeah.
Is
Rick
the blind
Overton.
swordsman.
Yep. Chris O'Dowd. He's pretty funny.
So
Jeff
there were some
Dunham's
things
in there. Yeah.
Octavia Spencer. What did you think? I mean, she's an award-winning.
I just love
performer.
Octavia Spencer. We first noticed her way back in 99 in Being John Malkovich in her little, brief scene in the elevator. I think at this point in her career, she was still just doing a lot of just little fun bit parts, just kind of all over the place in whatever kind of she had the opportunity to do and show what sort of talent she had. The very next year is when she does The Help. And that's really kind of her transition into much bigger opportunities because of her Oscar win with that film. And she's just done so much stuff. And I've always loved seeing her on screen. And she's just fun. She's fun in her weird little role that she has here where she communes with the dead lobsters on the table. Oh dear.
You still haven't watched her Apple TV Plus show, Truth Be Told?
I have not.
Andy, you got to watch that. She's a podcaster. It's like it's made
totally
for
know
us.
Yeah. It really is, yeah.
Yeah.
But is there a podcast about it that I can listen to instead?
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
One other thing I wanted to say about the way that this script unfolds, and I think further evidence about the point that we were talking about with Tim and Barry and their friendship and Tim's relationship with Julie. By the time we're all at Kieran's secret getaway ranch, all of our characters are there. And I'm just like, Tim has so much time and opportunity to talk to Julie, the love of his life, about everything going on. But what happens is he ends up Barry overhears him talking about him and is really depressed and goes outside and stands in the pond. And Tim, instead of focusing on his girlfriend, goes out and joins Barry to have a conversation with him, making up with him. I'm like, your girlfriend is the one you need to be making up with. And that's like the whole issue in this film is like, and that's why it's frustrating because Julie is left by the wayside because they've really made this a focus on the relationship between the men. And it's just, it's frustrating.
Jim Denault is behind the camera. There's some fine comedic camera work in this movie. I do like Jim Denault. I was looking at his credits. I hadn't put together so many of the things that he's done. He is currently, looks like just wrapped Yellowstone, 7-episode series, and The Affair, which was very popular with my mother. But he's done a lot of other movies and TV shows that I think are certainly worth noting. Even more so, Trumbo, which I thought he was terrific. Wayward Pines, the TV series, the Amazon series, was exceptional. Silicon Valley, he did 7 episodes, which is another great sort of comedy train there. And but he's got 74 credits to his name and some great work.
And a variety, which I think it's interesting because sometimes you see people who are doing like these comedy films and you look at their list and it's all that genre. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of all over the place. Like he's done some indie films like Maria Full of Grace, Boys Don't Cry.
Which is great.
Yeah. And it's great to see that kind of balance. But then, the musical stuff with like Pitch Perfect 2.
Pitch Perfect, yeah.
More kind of the tween film Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants 2. So, I mean, he's really He's kind of doing a wide variety of work, which is always nice to see.
My Big Fat Greek Wedding too.
I feel like it's one of those films though where, and I feel like this is a trick with comedy like this, is you don't want to overdo the camera work because the film itself is really what needs to sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think that it's fine. I think it's fine here. I will say, Jim Denault and I do share a birthday.
Do you?
So there, I like him that much more.
Theodore Shapiro behind the music. Did you
He's
get a good
great
laugh?
composer who does good comedy scores. I've always liked that, but not just comedy scores. Like he's all over the place. But I mean, he does a lot of he works with the frat pack quite a bit. Blades of Glory, I Love You Man, Tropic Thunder. He does all of those, but then he's also doing stuff like The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which has just a much nicer kind of introspective feel through it with some of that comedy and everything. I just definitely feel like he's kind of a fun composer who does he just does comedy music really well.
I think so too. But for me, Secret Life of Walter Mitty is absolutely the best thing he's done, followed very quickly by Tropic Thunder.
I would say followed quickly by Captain Underpants, the first epic movie. The music in that is so good. It is so good.
That's true. You win. That's true. But Walter Mitty is still on top. Captain
Walter
Underpants,
Mitty,
Tropic Thunder,
sure.
I'll let those duke it out. But I think you're
fair.
absolutely right. He has a real sensibility for comic moments. We should talk a little bit about the Weber thing, right? We've just done 2 pairs of these Weber movies. What's the deal with remaking Weber movies now that we've done these 2? What do you think?
Well, one, I will, before we say that, I do just want to say, I wish that, I know we were kind of, unfortunately, just focused on films that were more readily accessible. There were other films in his library that it was easy to find the American film, but not so easy to find the French original. Mm-hmm. I would love to have had a pairing in this where he had, because he has directed both the French and the American remake. I would love to have had one of those pairs in this list, but we'll just have to save that for another day. Without that, I guess what I would say is, he is a guy who he's got the comedy down as far as making kind of, I guess what I would say is just kind of big, broad comedy that is easily understandable in many languages. And I think that's why his comedies end up striking a chord with so many people.
There's a fantastic interview with him it's by Andrea Meyer, and it's over in IndieWire. She did this great interview with him when this one came out. And she asked a couple of questions that I wanted to give you some responses here. I'll put the link in the show notes. The first one is, she asked, what is it about your films that makes American filmmakers want to remake them, right? Our central question. I thought it was interesting to get Weber in his own words to tell us, what does he think about this? And he says, I think it's because I'm attracted to high concept movies, easy to tell in 2 words. For instance, I did a film called La Main d'Horreur, here called A Pain in the A. Billy Wilder remade it. He made a so-so movie, Buddy Buddy. But if I tell you the story, it's very easy. A man who has to kill the president in a hotel room and a salesman who wants to commit suicide is next door. And those 2 guys meet, the suicidal and the killer. I know American studios are attracted by high-concept movies. I was very flattered and then, at the same time, a bit disappointed because he didn't succeed. And she follows up with this, which is one I think you asked about specifically. She follows up with, the original version of your films always seems to be superior to the American remake. Even the one you directed, 3 Fugitives, was much better in French. Why do you think that's the case? Bold, Andrea, bold.
Right.
And he says, it's like in church when we had the Mass in Latin. It was more mysterious. Then we translated it in French, and it was not as interesting. It's the same thing with adaptations. In French, we like them because it's more exotic. But what is the point is that it did well. It did $45 million gross for a film that cost $16 million. It was kind of a hit, which is what counts in Hollywood. So
true.
I put that quote in our notes but didn't give you the question because I wanted you to hear that her question directly insults his own remake of The Three Fugitives.
That's hilarious. What's funny is in preparation for this, from between last week and now, I actually did track down The Tall Blonde Man with One Black Shoe. I watched that, and I watched The Man with One Red Shoe, which happens to be very much a guilty pleasure of mine. I love that movie.
That's weird. I didn't know that.
That is a great example of a pairing that I think that the original works and the remake ends up kind of doing it justice. So I'd be curious to think if, I'm assuming from this that he didn't think so, but I think so. So there.
There
Veber.
is no mention of that hit pairing in this article. He does
Everybody's
say
favorite Veber pairing.
Rather pointedly, he says that he thinks American and French comedy are dying because there are very few of them that are any good. It's a serious time for movies. Reviewers are very cruel to comedies and nicer to serious movies, the ones who have a kind of meaning that is more than just a joke. I've done 2 or 3 serious films, but they haven't done as well as the comedies. People expect me to make them laugh.
It's interesting. I feel like it's just the way that people expect the stories to unfold. I don't think people are that keen on movies that are just a joke anymore. I feel like they do want a little bit of I guess I could say, a story that shows it's kind of grown with the times. I think storytelling has definitely changed with the times. I don't think people want that simple of a story. They want it to be a little bigger. And maybe that's why the American need to retell this story and throw so much more into it is what happened.
I've studied the human mind. I've learned how to read it and ultimately control it.
Oh, I can't move.
Oh, buried move. Just move.
I can't.
Yeah, you can.
I can't.
I release you.
So before we go, I have a few random little points that I want to bring up. One, this was an interesting little note. The dinner scene was filmed in the same location as the Wayne Manor was for the Batman TV show.
Get in what was it? It was in the bookcase? It wasn't the fireplace.
Right.
Somebody pull the lever, pull the book.
All right. Escape from that fire in the living room.
Right.
The other thing I wanted to say before we go is that those mouse dioramas, which actually are really fantastic, and which Barry calls his mousterpieces, they are created by the Chiodo brothers. It's a trio of siblings who do a lot of really interesting work. And I had no idea that this sort of work is not what they're as well known for. Their work focuses on special effects, claymation, creature creation, stop motion, animatronics. They worked on Killer Clowns from Outer Space. They did the puppets in Critters, Ernest Scared Stupid, Team America World Police. They did the Large Marge scene in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Wow.
They did the Little North Pole stop motion in Elf. And it's like when you look at all this stuff, and you're like, wow, okay, these are 3 awesome brothers, Charles, Stephen, and Edward. And that's the sort of stuff that they're cranking out. And then they go and do these masterpieces for this film. I was like, it's not quite what their normal line of work is, but I thought they did a great job with it.
Well, you know what stinks about the whole thing is that the entire premise of the movie is based on these people making fun of their work.
Yeah, right.
That's how it works. And I think it's really awesome.
Yeah, I do too. If a little disturbing. It's like the weird things that taxidermists do with animals.
Right.
Sometimes,
right.
But,
How did it do at award season?
This wasn't a big award movie, Pete. I know you're sad with that, but it had 1 win with 2 nominations. At the Satellite Awards, which I didn't even know what these were, it's an annual award given by the International Press Academy. This was the last year they separated their categories between comedy musicals and drama categories like the Golden Globes. So we had 1 nomination here for Best Actor in a Comedy or Musical. It was Steve Carell. He, of course, lost to Michael Cera in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which I would say thumbs up to that choice.
Yep.
Second one, the Comedy Awards. And this is a funny award that IMDb doesn't even have listed. The Comedy Awards were run by Comedy Central. This was the first year of the Comedy Awards. Out of 2 whole years that they had these awards, It was the second time Comedy Central tried running some awards and failed. The Comedy Awards nominated Zach Galifianakis as Best Comedy Actor, and he won. So there you go.
That's very telling, isn't it?
Right, exactly.
Oh my goodness. How to do it at the box office.
Well, Jay Roach, his inspired adaptation of Weber's story cost a pretty penny, $69 million, or $80.7 million in today's dollars. Why it cost so much, I can only speculate. Surely, The Vulture. After concern about opening mid-July opposite Salt and Inception, this movie was pushed a few weeks back and released wide on July 30th, 2010, opposite Cats and Dogs, The Revenge of Kitty Galore, Charlie St. Cloud, and the limited release of Get Low. It opened in the number 2 spot behind Inception and ended up making $73 million domestically and $13.8 internationally for a total gross in today's dollars of $101.6 million. It did well enough for itself, but is the lowest adjusted profit per finished minute and profit to cost ratio of all the films in this series, landing with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $183,000 and a profit per loss of 1.26 times its original budget. Just scraping by. Still, it is in the green, so it does count as a win.
And, it does count as a win, and it counts as a win. I feel like I didn't like the movie. It's not for me. Let's just say that. It's just not for me. But I hope that doesn't, I don't want that to shine an ill light on Jay Roach, because I think he's a funny guy, and I like a lot more of his movies than I don't like. I think he has an interesting sensibility. I like a lot of the movies that I would imagine you don't like also. So I think our Venn diagram of fans of Jay Roach movies, might not cross over. But, I think Bombshell and Trumbo and The Campaign and Meet the Fockers, of course, those are all, for me, great experiences. And I like the Austin Powers movies. So what are you going to do?
They're fun.
Meet the Parents. They're great. I think he does some generally great work. That makes this movie stand out even more for me, that it is, so far from what I really like about the other movies that he's directed.
Yeah, I think that's where I stand too. I think Jay Roach has done some good stuff, and then this comes along, and I'm like, gosh, I can't help but feel like. And I feel like I blame it more on the script than him, because I think when there is some solid comedy in here, I think he can handle it okay. I just feel like, and maybe I don't know, maybe he gave the actors too much leeway in some things. I don't know if it's the script, if it's him. David Guion and Michael Handelman had adapted the script. We didn't bring them up, but I don't know where the issue lies, but it's definitely a problematic Jay Roach film for me.
With that, Andy, we should probably take it to the mat.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You can see all the movies we've talked about on this very show. If you swipe over in your show notes and tap the word flickchart, it should take you directly to this movie, where you can add it to your list and see how it stands up against ours.
All right. Before we begin, I do want to point this out. Flickchart allows, right now, the way that they're structured, 5 actors to appear on the starring list. That's all. So they always are debating who are the 5 who should appear here. Yeah. And in order, this is who they pick. Stéphanie Szostak, number 1 spot. Steve Carell, Jemaine Clement, Zach Galifianakis, and Paul Rudd.
What? Paul Rudd is last?
I don't even know what to say. I just had to put that out there. Strange. I don't know what Flickchart may want to re-evaluate their choices there. First up, we have Veber versus Veber, Dinner for Schmucks, or La Cage aux Folles.
Well, it'd be La Cage aux Folles.
La Cage aux Folles for me. Dinner for Schmucks or The Host, Little Bong Joon-ho.
The Host.
I will take The Host.
Yes.
Dinner for Schmucks.
Come on, Cherry Moon.
The Thomas Crown Affair remake, the 1999 Pierce Brosnan, Rene Russo version.
I think I'm all about that briefcase. Folding up paintings.
That's right. I'll take Thomas Crown Affair. Dinner for Schmucks or The Little Drummer Girl.
Dinner
our
for
favorite
Schmucks.
Diane Keaton film.
Turns out there's a line, and it's right here.
Yeah, I will too. That was a tough one. Dinner for Schmucks or Christmas in Connecticut? Oh, Barbara Stanwyck, please. I will take
Christmas,
that one.
please.
Dinner for Schmucks or number 5 in the Apes series, Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
You're probably Battle, aren't you?
It's got problems, but I will pick Battle.
All right, I'll go Battle.
Dinner for Schmucks or Wendy and Lucy. Not quite Meek's cutoff, but another in that vein. I will take Wendy and Lucy. I thought there was some pretty solid stuff in that film. That quiet little film.
All right. Yep.
Dinner for Schmucks or Outbreak, helicopter and all.
Oh, wow. Outbreak.
Yeah, I'll go Outbreak. Dinner for Schmucks or from 1939, The Hound of the Baskervilles.
Yeah, Dinner for Schmucks.
I will take The Hound of the Baskervilles. I'll do a little Sherlock Holmes mystery story. Heroin addiction and all.
Yeah, the heroin addiction. Yeah. It was the dogs in the pits. The dogs in... do I want to give this one up? I honestly, at this point, I don't care. You can have it.
You don't have the curse that I do, or maybe the benefit. Every pairing, I have to look at Steve Carell's like idiot face on all of these movie posters that they bring up. I'm just like, I will pick anything over that face. I don't think that's how Flickchart works, but
no, I don't think so. That wasn't what they intended.
No, I'm sorry, I lost track of what your decision was.
I just go with the one that's not Dinner for Schmucks.
Hound of the Baskervilles.
Yes.
Okay. Well, they were close anyway. Hound of the Baskervilles was at 425. Dinner for Schmucks, 426. 426 out of 454 on our chart, which puts it at a low 6%.
6% is pretty low. Did you beat that personally?
You know, when you're ranking movies, and inevitably there's a percentage ranking of all of them, I don't think it's fair, because I don't think that there's a percentage, a slot in every percentage for a film across all of your rankings. I think that there are a lot of really great films and a lot of crappy films and a lot in between. I don't think this is a 6% film. I ranked this. I mean, it has some great moments, and that scene in the luncheon with the Swiss couple. I mean, that just, if the whole film could have been that, it would have been, a great comedy. As it is, it landed at 27% on my chart, 3179 out of 4351.
Well, it's lower on yours, but not by much. It hit a let's see, out of 1450, it hit 925. Which is a 36%. And it's all about what it just went up against. Again, like, I feel like there are lots of things I could laugh at in this movie in isolated clips. It's a great movie for YouTube clips. I could find humor. Yeah, 36%. At once I feel like, well, that may be a little low, because I do like Steve Carell and Paul Rudd. And then I realized I just saw the movie, and maybe it's okay. Maybe it's okay right where it is. If I'm to go by the algorithm over at letterboxd.com/the next reel, this should be a 2-star movie. And I'm wondering if that restaurant scene is enough. Maybe the redemption, a little bit of an attempt at redemption at the dinner is enough to keep it at 2 stars. Could be 1.5. Yeah.
It's 2 stars for me. 2 stars, no like. And I feel like it earns a lot of those 2 stars from those comedy moments that work really well.
Okay. All right. 2 stars.
And those mice.
2 stars, no like.
Those mice were great.
All right.
2 stars and a like from you. Okay.
No, like, get that like off of there.
Oh, okay. Sorry. 2 stars, no like across the board then. All right. There it is. Dinner for Schmucks.
I feel like we're gonna get some guff, because, do you remember when
the
was
women?
It? I feel like
people were angry at us because of our review of the women.
No. Hands down. It was not long ago that Steve picked Dinner for Schmucks. It was in November 23rd, 2019. He picked Dinner for Schmucks for his Satmat pick. And
our Saturday matinee show you're talking about.
Yeah, it was the Saturday matinee show. And it was it was a quote. He started with a quote, and neither of us could remember the quote. Like, it didn't ring a bell at all. And I'm watching this movie and thinking about that and realizing now I remember why I didn't remember the quote at all. Not even a little bit. So
I don't even remember Steve. What quote he used.
Yeah,
That's
right.
funny.
That was his number one pick that week.
Wow. I bet it was that goat line. I'm just a goat who is halfway through eating itself.
Just maybe that's
Steve's
where
own philosophy.
That's where the extra half star is. That line is great. Well, that's the end of our series on Weber and the remakes. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, I do want to look at more Weber films, but we'll just have to do that on our own. But I am curious about more of his stuff because I really do like seeing the French originals. So I'm curious to see more. But we're taking a turn, sticking with comedy, though. We're going to be looking at some Cary Grant films. I shouldn't say straight up comedy. But I think that he's an actor who definitely brings some of that to his films. We're starting with Arsenic and Old Lace, Frank Capra's film from 1944. Then we're going to be getting another Hitchcock on our list with one of my favorite Hitchcocks, which is North by Northwest from 1959. And we're going to be ending it with one of my favorite films of all time, which is Charade from 1963.
I love it.
This is going to be just a great series of great films. I can't wait because this is like, kind of wrapping up this little stretch before our hiatus. It's like this is makes me happy to kind of go out this way.
It is. It's a great way to hit the streets. Hit the streets, Andy.
When the movie ends.
I don't know. July. Wait a minute. Are we
sorry.
really taking the July hiatus?
I thought you were giving me that.
No, I was. And then I got excited about that because somebody said something else about that. Are we really taking the July hiatus this year when we've just come out of quarantine? Is that really a time to stop podcasting? I just want to plant that as a seed. We should think about that harder.
I guess people will find out by the time July hits if we're taking a break or not.
We may not be. We may be here. I don't even know. When the movie ends.
Why don't we just make it a daily show for the month of July? Just throwing it out there.
You're right. It's good. We already produced enough damn stuff anyway.
Oh, when the movie ends.
Our conversation begins. Amazon giveth, Andrew.
As Amazon always doeth.
Amazon. It's better. It's better this time. People are opinionated.
Yes. And it's
Guarded,
a little, I would say it's a little more spread on Amazon than often we find when it seems to, I think a lot of movies tend to be, for people who decide, I'm going to leave a review on Amazon, a lot of them are 5-star review people.
Yeah.
Unless they're complaining about the quality of the transfer or subtitles or something
sort
like
of shipping thing, or it's a regional issue, won't play, or of course I don't like to read my movies, But this one, in fact, we have a couple of good reviews. Did you go low or high?
I went high because I ranked it pretty low.
I think that's a strong opening move. Andy, why don't you go ahead?
I have a 5-star. I was going to say a 1-star. I'm like, oh, no, wait. I have a 5-star by Hope Indengasi. I don't know if I'm saying that right, Hope. Hope says, funniest movie I've watched since 2018. I was clapping at the scenes and shouting. My mom thought I was crazy.
Don't watch this movie with your mother.
I like to think her mom was just in the next room and was just listening to her clapping and shouting.
I actually went with one that I thought was interesting. It's a 1-star, and it's from the great Michael Clayton.
We like his work.
We sure do. We like his work a lot. And he says, if you respect yourself and your time, don't watch this. So we're leaning in on self-respect, self-loathing. If you start watching this, you will get to a point in the movie where all sense of what basic storytelling has been abandoned, and you will realize you are just watching pictures moving on a screen and hearing voices. At this point, should you continue to watch, it would be a clear sign of self-destructive behavior and lack of self-esteem. The healthy choice would be to heed these words and not start watching at all. It's a little bit of meditation from Michael Clayton.
I wonder if this was before or after George Clooney played him.
Well, I guess I can tell you that. When did George Clooney play him? No, it was after. because this was June 30th, 2019.
Oh, that was very definitely after. So,
Definitely
okay,
after.
it's good to know that he's kind of moved out of that realm of work and into movie critiques on Amazon.
Well, and I should give you a sense. 3-star movie, Revenge. I don't know Revenge. 2-star Money, Equalizer 2. 2-star movie. He actually
Equalizer
gets
2, okay.
Yeah. He says of wet bags, Angel Love, 2-pack baby cloth diaper, wet dry bags with 2 zippered pockets, travel, beach, pool, gym bag for swimsuits. He gives it a 1-star and says, not waterproof. Don't Think Twice. He gives 1-star. Remember,
Wow,
Don't Think
okay.
Twice? That we had that as a trailer rewind pick. I think the guys like that one.
Yeah.
But he does say the Anchor dual display universal docking station with DVI HDMI output, audio, gigabit Ethernet, 2 USB 3 ports. That's 5-star. It's great. So
That's what he said. It's great.
he's capable of loving.
Okay, good to know.
Back to work, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, Amazon. It's hard to believe we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
We are highlighting adaptations from Season 9 over at our Originals page, thenextreel.com/originals. That's the site where listeners can purchase the source material for all of our adapted film discussions.
We had a big Robin Hood series this season, looking at 9 different versions on screen. Many were likely adapted from Howard Pyle's The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, including Douglas Fairbanks in Robin Hood, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Disney's Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, and the 1991 Robin Hood, and Ridley Scott's Robin Hood.
Robin and Marian was specifically based on the ballad The Jest of Robin Hood.
And we really don't have too much to say about Robin and the Seven Hoods.
We talked Dead Ringers for our David Cronenberg series adapted from Barry Wood and Jack Geislin's novel Twins.
Have you checked out that show?
You know, I haven't, but I've heard great things.
2 comedies from our Steve Martin series were adaptations, Pennies from Heaven from the BBC series, and The Lonely Guy from the book by Bruce J. Friedman.
The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas was part of our Colin Higgins series, adapted from the Broadway musical.
Spike Lee brought us Black Klansman from Ron Stallworth's memoir.
And we looked at a trio of John le Carré adaptations, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, The Little Drummer Girl, and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Plus, all 3 movies in our Agnieszka Holland series were based on books, Europa, In Darkness, and Spore.
La Cage aux Folles and its remake The Birdcage both came from Jean Poiret's original play.
We also talked about Arsenic and Old Lace and Charade in our Cary Grant series.
All of these were based on other material, and it is all available on our Originals page, thenextreel.com/originals. Every book purchased supports the podcast.
Get the full list of adaptations we've covered and start your next read today at thenextreel.com/originals.